It is the final nursery video, y'all. Now, before we're whisked away into the even bigger, more whole you turf of your house and neighborhood and those modules, I want to end this section with a nursery topic that is passionately near and dear to my heart. This is the nursery myths and magical thinking video. In this video, I'm breaking down my biggest fertility myth pet peeves and hopefully blowing them completely out of the water. So here they are, my top 5 crappy, hurtful, totally BS fertility myths and magical thinking traps that I want you to avoid. You've got to be positive and want this. Believing, vision boards, manifesting, and conjuring your baby. Relax, that's all it takes. The universe is teaching you a lesson, or everything happens for a reason. You're only getting older. And last but not least, magic bullets and cure-all supplements. Are you missing just one pill that'll fix it all? We'll talk about it. There are 3 questions I want you to check in with when you're debating whether or not to buy into any fertility belief. And we're going to take them for a test drive on this first fertility myth. The 3 questions are, first, would you say this to someone with a legit medical condition? Number 2, what does logic or reality tell you about this? And number 3, is it a realistic expectation for you to act or believe this way? So let's apply each one of these 3 questions to this idea of wanting a baby enough and needing to believe and be positive. Would you say this to someone with a legit medical condition? In case you haven't gathered this by now, fertility issues are legitimate biological and medical conditions. Sure, just like any medical condition, they're on a continuum from subtle and subclinical to major and diagnosable, but all have some level of legit medical or biological cause. And yet, there are all these things that happen in the world of infertility and fertility medicine that would not happen with other medical conditions. So it messes with our heads and it makes it easy to lose sight of this fact. And then that makes it easier and easier to get sucked into harmful, magical thinking. I touched on this in the foundations module when we talked about fertility ethics, but again, let's get crystal clear on what's going on here because it's seriously effed up. Where else in medicine can a clinic say, well, you're too sick, we're going to refuse to work with you because it messes with our statistics? Where else in medicine can a clinic say, there's an option where you pay us for 3 treatments, and if the first one works, we'll keep all the money. If none of them work, we'll give you a refund? Where else in medicine does the vast majority of insurance have huge gaps in coverage or such extreme limitations? Although it's not overtly coming out and saying certain things, these insane and only in the world of infertility things give us strong messages. And those messages include things like infertility must be our problem and not a medical condition, because if it were a medical condition, a doctor couldn't turn you away, right? Infertility treatments must be more like a luxury or an indulgence. Shared risk plans are more like opting into some optional protection plan on a new TV than healthcare. And infertility must just be a personal choice, more like getting a facelift than a life-saving treatment. If it were needed, insurance would have to cover it, right? So it starts with the culture of infertility and how medicine is practiced. And these messages creep into our psyche and start to make it easy to tell ourselves that our fertility struggles aren't as legit as something like, say, heart disease. Only it is as legit as heart disease. Can you imagine going into the ER with chest pain, finding out that there's an actual blockage in your heart, and then someone coming in and saying, here's the scoop, your insurance doesn't cover bypass surgery. If you opt to do it, it'll cost $15,000 out of pocket. Think about it, let us know. And in the meantime, we want you to really picture yourself with a healthy heart. Here are some magazines and a couple of glue sticks. Cut out some pictures of people that look like they have healthy hearts and stick them on this piece of paper and make a vision board, okay? That is insane, right? How about this? Same scenario, you decide you will do the surgery again out of pocket on your own dime, and as you're getting rolled back into surgery while still having some scary feeling chest pain, you take a look at your anxiety-riddled loved ones' faces, and someone comes up to you and asks if you really, in your heart of hearts, believe that this surgery is going to work, and if you really want to live. Also insane, right? And yet, it's totally acceptable in the world of infertility. I once read an article that suggested that on the day of embryo transfer, acupuncturists should really press women and couples to more fully explore if they are really ready to be parents and straight up ask them if the women can really picture themselves being pregnant. This is so crazy and wrong. There are loads of faux holistic fertility books with quizzes about which beliefs are holding you back from being a mom. I actually own a book that has a quiz, and in it says, "Are you truly committed to the sleep deprivation that comes with a newborn?" What? Seriously? I was in full-on labor with our daughter, and I wasn't sure if I was 100% ready to be a mom. Who the hell is ready to sign up for massive sleep deprivation? The answer is no one is. It's actually insult to injury that ART treatments force you to literally sign on the dotted line and pay large sums of money saying you're sure of things that no one is absolutely sure of. To suggest that maybe it's a lack of wanting it enough, or that it's your fault because you failed to manifest something, or you don't believe in it enough is just untrue. It's also cruel. When we don't treat fertility struggles like legitimate medical conditions, we will get more hurt. So ask yourself, would you suggest this to someone with a legitimate medical condition? And then remind yourself, you have a legitimate medical condition. You do not need to want this enough for it to work. And if you still happen to want evidence of your wanting it enough, I'd step back and see that no one would ever go through IVF or half of what most women subject themselves to if they didn't desperately want this. The shots, the pokes, the prods, the tests, the total life upheaval, the financial and emotional strains. If you want evidence of whether you want this enough or not, look at all of this. Not whether you've made a vision board or you can picture yourself pregnant and happy and signing up for sleep deprivation. What does logic tell you? We need to get Vulcan here and use logic. Whenever you catch yourself thinking, oh no, I thought X, Y, or Z and that means it's going to happen, try to think of an example of where the opposite thing happens with the same exact thought. It's usually pretty easy to see how not legit manifesting is this way. For example, you might think, I didn't believe in my pregnancy enough. I thought I was going to miscarry, and then I had a miscarriage. I made my miscarriage happen. But think of logical examples where the exact opposite thing happens. The woman who never thought she'd have a miscarriage and who does. Or the thousands of other women on countless forums online who knew they were having miscarriages but didn't actually miscarry and had healthy babies. It's so easy to think you didn't believe hard enough or that you manifested your miscarriage into being, but that's turning a correlation, I thought I would miscarry, and then I had a miscarriage, into causation. I thought I would miscarry, and that caused me to have a miscarriage. Correlation is not causation. Thoughts alone do not make something happen. Now, I'm not saying what you think doesn't matter at all. I would never tell someone who needs heart surgery that what they think doesn't matter at all. It absolutely does still matter. Thoughts have really profound impact on our quality of life in many ways, and there are lots of ripples from there. But thoughts are definitely not a substitution for heart surgery. It's a use both type situation. And the surgery is honestly by far the bigger deal when it comes to this particular outcome. And when it comes to thoughts, remember, it's about being realistic and expressing in healthy ways, not about being purely positive. So sure, it's good to feel confident in your surgeon and positive about your outcomes, but it's also reasonable that you would also feel scared and worried about dying too, both together. That doesn't mean you don't want to live. That's just being a human. Is it a realistic expectation for you to do or act or believe this thing? I just had a visit with a woman named Alicia who laid on my acupuncture table in tears, confessing that she knew she was standing in her own way because she knew there was a switch that needed to turn on in her body that would allow a baby to come in and a pregnancy to happen. But that she felt broken and ashamed because try as she might, she couldn't turn on that switch. She couldn't imagine herself pregnant, which meant she must not believe it or want it enough. Alicia had been trying to have a baby for 4 years. As she told me how she actually felt, hopeless and frustrated and angry, I thought to myself, yeah, that's realistic. Anyone who's 4 years into this on the typical path is definitely going to feel terrible. She was being human, and conditions being what they are, how could it be anything other than what it is? Why would Alicia feel hopeful and turn that switch on? In fact, she had spent 4 years getting the hope beat out of her, and she was starting IVF now, which was big and scary and not ideal and something she swore she'd never do when she started all of this. I told Alicia in no uncertain terms that how she felt was perfectly okay and normal, and she wasn't standing in her own way or jinxing anything. I reassured her that I've been to some of the saddest IVF transfers where sadness made way more realistic sense than being positive did, and they still worked. I taught her that the healthiest emotions were realistic and outwardly expressed, and that while I wanted to work on how she was feeling and her emotions for her heart and her mind to feel better and to avoid post-traumatic stress disorder and other brutal outcomes, I did not believe her fertility outcomes were hanging solely on whether or not she could turn on some non-existent switch of positivity. And Alicia got pregnant with that IVF. And we kept talking about realistic emotions because she didn't instantly feel excited. Instead, she felt guarded and anxious as hell all over again. That's human. So maybe picturing yourself pregnant is impossible because you've had 4 miscarriages and it just hurts too much to go there and you're being human and protecting yourself. Maybe you had 2 failed embryo transfers and you go into the 3rd one a bit checked out because the alternative is too hard and you're just guarding your heart the best way you can. Maybe you're angry because no one helped you out for years and now you're just discovering what's going on and you're furious no one gave you better information. That all makes sense. None of this jinxes you. None of this makes success impossible. All of this is human. It's not realistic for you to feel anything other than what emotions align with your reality. So if picturing yourself pregnant on the day of embryo transfer just feels right in your heart because you're excited that you worked so hard to get there and come what may, you are pregnant until proven otherwise, and it's nice to feel some joy and hope in a process that's really, really hard, that is beautiful and realistic, and yes, 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 do it. And if a vision board or fertility jewelry you make is done, say, in a class where you meet a whole bunch of other women who are struggling with infertility, where you can share your hopes and your fears and your dreams and feel safe and understood and create something all together, but you also know that your vision board isn't the end-all be-all to getting a baby, but making it still feels good because it's intentional and helps you honor what you want and share it with a bunch of women who can hold that dream up with you, that's got about 50 nice holistic things going on. So go for it. Just know where the real power is coming from. It's in the community and the expression and the creation and the realistic hope and connection and mindful experience, not the vision board. Just like it's in the engagement and not the pineapple core itself. So we've spent a bunch of time on this be positive and manifest myth to lay the foundation of these 3 questions that you need to ask. Let's more quickly apply them to some of these other myths and traps. How about just relax? Think of those 3 questions. Would you say this to someone with a legitimate medical condition? Maybe, but you'd say it more as something that was generally nice and could offset the stress of the medical condition and help support their quality of life and progress as a whole. Not suggest that relaxing alone would magically fix them, right? Ditto for you. What does logic tell you? Some super relaxed people don't get pregnant. Some super stressed people do get pregnant. Clearly, relaxation isn't the only factor here. Statistics actually show those couples who move on and get into adoption, which actually isn't that relaxing at all, but is associated with this idea of letting go and getting pregnant, get pregnant exactly as often as those who keep trying and presumably don't relax and let go. Again, this is a factor that you have some control over and makes a huge difference for your big picture with ripples into your nursery that definitely won't hurt your cause. So do it up where you can, but don't think it's the magic fix because that's where you put too much emphasis on one thing and hurt yourself. Plus, you can't really fake this one. Is it a realistic expectation for you to just relax? Ugh, the answer is probably no. The schedule of an IVF isn't super conducive to laying back and letting life just roll by. Being pregnant after having a bunch of miscarriages is crazy stressful and not relaxing. Why would you magically relax in this? Get back to the scales idea and offset, but don't expect to get rid of the stress. For the things you can't relax around, be compassionate. Stress is not the problem here. It's how you relate to the stress. The belief I want to strongly question here is that you're lacking some wisdom or need to learn a lesson before you deserve a baby. First off, hold it up to those first two questions. Do you think someone gets cancer because they need to learn a lesson? I really don't. So, sure, you can learn a ton in the hard places of life. That's what this whole program is about. Every terrible thing is indeed an opportunity for you to be your most amazing, whole, authentic, resilient self. But do I think this is happening to you because the universe needs you to do this before you deserve a baby? Oh, hell no. Shit is shit. We're just trying to turn lemons into lemonade, 'cause what other options do we have? How about using logic? Look around. Not to get too judgy, but there are clearly loads of people who have plenty of room for lesson learning in some pretty overt ways that still have babies. If being wise or enlightened to deserve a baby was a requirement, there would be no child abuse or neglect or dysfunctional families. Basically, most of us wouldn't be here. Clearly, reality does not support this myth or idea. And yet, I've been to a fertility retreat where the person teaching said, the babies of tomorrow are operating on a higher cosmic level. They refuse to come in through us until we're open to their level of consciousness. I'm sorry, but this makes me cringe. It's like saying, how nice for your neighbor Susie. She must be enlightened enough to deserve her 3 children, but you aren't quite up to snuff. Sorry. It's super hurtful and wrong. I once attended a lecture by another teacher who is wildly popular in the world of fertility acupuncture, and in it, she actually told more than 100 acupuncturists that when a baby has a chromosomal disorder or developmental concern, it's because the chromosomes have shifted to mirror back the imbalances in the mother's life, forcing her to face her own problems and thereby teaching her a lesson she needs to learn. I was already frantically scribbling a fuming review on my presenter feedback card about how insane and insanely hurtful teaching this new age BS is when an audience member asked how she should share this information with a patient of hers who recently delivered a baby girl with a severe chromosomal disorder that had eventually led to the baby's death. I wanted to stand up and scream, you don't share this information. You don't tell this mom this information because this information is completely false and awful and it will wreck her in unimaginable ways and it's cruel and it's insane and anyone who tells this to people should never be allowed to practice medicine, much less teach it to other providers. There is nothing medically accurate about this. There is nothing scientifically sound about this. There is nothing helpful, and there's nothing that logic would confirm because it's a lie. I honestly even hesitated to share this story in this program because I don't want to put this idea into the world at all. But I decided to tell you this because there were over 100 acupuncturists at this talk, at this one conference, and this idea is out there. This woman has books and is a keynote speaker at so many conferences, and I don't want to risk you hearing anything remotely like this from someone and having even one moment of entertaining it. Don't. It is a lie. It will hurt you. This kick in the teeth might be the best thing that ever happened to you. Yes, I believe that's true, but it isn't happening because you need to learn a lesson to deserve a baby. And if you don't learn the lesson, you don't deserve a baby, or you deserve a less than healthy baby. That is so wrong. The lesson learning here is optional, and I absolutely want you to do it. I know it can make your whole life better and your future child's life better too. Do it for the right reasons, because you choose resilience and you choose to take something that is unfair and brutal and not let it beat you. Let's tackle the mother of all fertility myths, pun very much intended. There is this booming voice in the world of fertility that would have you believe that your ovaries are going to turn into pumpkins at the stroke of midnight on your 35th birthday, and from that point forward, you're old and need to act with the appropriate level of despair and desperation. In this way of seeing your fertility, you should have done IVF 2 years ago, and so taking 3 months off is always a bad idea. This is baby blinders territory, and it's missing the forest for the trees. I don't need to look any further than my own story and body to know that age is not everything. I was 25 and completely infertile. I wasn't ovulating, I wasn't menstruating, nothing for 2 years. I was in my 30s and I got pregnant literally the first time, not once, but twice. Clearly, age is not the only thing. This chart is about years, not months. And this chart is about averages, not individuals. This program is about getting customized and individual in your care and not just getting swept away in one-size-fits-all fertility. Remember the woman with the 4 years of notebooks documenting her perfectly timed sex that actually was only perfect for 30% of women, so it actually wasn't all that perfect. Her quest for baby number 2 started when she was 39. When I saw her, she was 42. Age does matter. But remember Carolyn, who was 42 when she started seeing me for her own baby number 2, who took 6 months to get her cycle back after not having a cycle for over 5 years, plus her house and neighborhood in shape too, and getting pregnant with IUI in her 40s. Age is a factor, but age is not the only factor. The same goes for younger women. For every woman in her late 30s to mid 40s I've seen beat the odds of her age, I've seen a woman in her late 20s and early 30s floored because she was banking on age being the end-all be-all, who in reality had much bigger issues as an individual. So when you look at the big picture, in either case, it's gonna make sense. Some older women have really amazing big picture balance, and some younger women are a total mess, like I was. I'd rather look at the whole person and have them go into a pregnancy after getting reasonably in balance in a reasonable amount of time, no matter what age. Remember, this just isn't about getting pregnant with bare minimum. This is about abundance and balance. The last myth I want to dispel is that you're missing some magic bullet pill or supplement. Let's quick start with those first 2 measuring sticks once again. Would you suggest it to a person with a legit medical condition like cancer? Maybe a supplement might help some specific piece of their puzzle, but it certainly wouldn't single-handedly fix a complex medical condition. So it is here. And use logic. If chasteberry or fill in the blank with whatever magic bullet you're thinking of really fixes every single hormonal imbalance for everyone, everyone would know about it and everyone would take it. So logically, many things aren't the magic bullet lots of faux holistic folks would have you believe. There's a reason for the saying, if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. Every supplement has its own properties and complex actions, and if these match the imbalances you actually have, they might help tip your scales in the right direction and improve your fertility in small and cumulative ways. But the opposite can be true too. A supplement might be the opposite of what your body really needs, and that might tip your scales more out of balance. So you need to be really smart and informed when it comes to supplements. Now, some people think, well, what's the harm? It's natural. But that's a dangerous mindset to be in. Supplements might be natural, but they're still actually changing your body chemistry. And just because something is natural doesn't mean it's harmless. For every person I've seen swear by ashwagandha or DHEA, I've seen another report it made everything in their body and cycle worse. So here are the 4 things I want you to keep in mind when navigating supplements to help avoid making your situation worse. First, moderation. Nowhere in the history of humanity do we naturally eat 10,000% of the recommended dose of anything on purpose. Maybe a culture eats a lot of one single thing, but it's only because that's the one thing they have available and not by choice. So I wouldn't eat 2 buckets of fish a day by choice. I don't see why anyone would take the fish oil equivalent. Recent research has actually shown high levels of vitamins as seemingly mundane as vitamin C and E and selenium have been linked to increased heart disease and cancers. We know better. Moderation is always a good idea. Don't put on the baby blinders, ignore common sense, and spend $300 a month choking down 12 vitamins a day for the next 6 months in the hopes that they will fix your eggs without also being really skillful in all sorts of ways at the same time and thinking about moderation. More is not better. Moderation is key. Mind your gaps. We could use some extra nutrition for lots of reasons. Aging and lifestyle depletes us. Maybe there are foods you might not eat regularly, but you should. Nutrients break down in the time food travels from the farm to the table, and foods generally start out with less nutrition because mass farming has stripped the soil of nutrients and hasn't put it back in. Did you know that the soil in North America has 85% less of some minerals than it did 100 years ago? Europe has 72% and Australia 55%. That all said, food is still pretty much always going to be best. Food is beautifully complex and has synergy to the nutrients in it, and it's way more than we could ever recreate in a pill. To imagine that taking fish oil is the same as eating fish is flawed on so many levels. So clearly there's a ton more going on with fish than fish oil. So first, make a reasonable effort to buy local, eat whole foods, and have a well-balanced and diverse diet. We'll talk lots more about diet in the house module. Then, rotate in some general supplements here and there to bridge your gaps. Personally, I rotate in a high-quality kids multivitamin and some extra vitamin D drops, taking each of them a couple times a week and throwing in some fish oil once or twice a week when I'm not eating fish. I might take some higher dose supplements for a short amount of time to troubleshoot something specifically, but that's not sustainable, and it's not a good big picture long-term choice. Customize. Don't just assume the best known fertility supplements are the only supplements to consider. As you start to learn about your whole house in the next module, you'll see that there are lots of variations on what each individual body might need and benefit from the most. If your gut is your main problem, there might be some great supplements that could help it heal, and that might serve your fertility way better than the more fertility-specific options. If your anxiety is out of control, 1 or 2 specific supplements might be game changers. And again, these might be best for your fertility too, even though you'll never read about them in fertility articles or books. Avoid one-size-fits-all approaches and get specific. Then get even more customized by listening to how your body actually feels on the supplement once you start it. Start one thing at a time so you can tell too. I decided to try 3 commonly used supplements for anxiety. The first one I tried felt amazing, like my stress buffer got 20% wider and I was less frazzled by the small stuff. The second one felt like absolutely nothing, and the third one just made me feel bloated and gross. Even when you're honing in on customizing, your body should always have the final say. No regrets. How many times in the history of nutritional science and supplements have we been told one thing only to have another thing proven 10 years later? We used to think that lead was super healthy. It was put in our toothpaste and in our foods. Now we know lead is poison. I think the chances of doing harm are greater the more we rely on any one thing as a magic bullet and overdo it and lose sight of moderation in our big picture. So, let's review this video along with its big picture ideas. You don't need to be positive. You don't need to believe or be totally relaxed to be fertile. Use 3 questions to check these or any other hurtful fertility belief and explore what level of power you want to give these ideas. First, would you say it to someone with a legitimate medical condition? Second, what does logic tell you? And third, is it a realistic expectation for you to do or act or think this way? This is not happening for a reason. You do not need to be wise to deserve a baby. You do not need to be perfect to have a healthy baby. If you have a baby with a chromosomal issue, it's not because you did something wrong. There's plenty of learning to be had in the hardest places in our life, but that isn't the reason this is happening to you. I'll keep saying it. You are more than your age. Whether you're over the fertility hill or young and baffled by your challenges, remember those continuums and do reasonable work where you could use improvements no matter what your age. There are no magic bullets. Supplements can be useful as small, cumulative influences to your big picture when done with moderation and customization in mind. But mega doses and magical thinking are not the recipe for success. Yay! The nursery module is done. You are halfway through the Baby You Want program. Let's review this module quick. In this module, we have broken down your nursery from the nuts and bolts of hormones and your menstrual cycle to what tests are most useful and how to listen to your individual cycle and use ART to serve you. We've also established some massive big picture nursery ideas like reframing reproductive function like your body's vacation account and calling out fertility myths that don't serve us. If you have a burning desire to dig into some of the a la carte nursery videos before you go on to the house module, now's an okay time to do it. Just remember, you are sitting on the edge of a totally new way to approach your fertility, and the house module is where you'll really take some big steps into uncharted territory. You can pimp out your nursery all day long, but if the foundation is crumbling, a squirrel's moving into the attic, and the rest of the house is a mess, you will be fighting an uphill battle. The next module will be all about how to really build up your whole body bank account so your vacation account naturally grows and everything gets better together. I'll see you there. A biological agent infiltrating your heart. Dang it. A vision board or fertility jewelry. If you feel like you have a burning desire to check out. Just warming up my fingies.